Hi, I'm John F. Allen.
And I'm RJ Sullivan.
And we're the Two Towers.
So, that all being said, now we are going to get into spoiler territory. Dun, 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 dun. If you have not seen The Shy, please go out and see it. We both highly recommend that you go give it a look. It is definitely worth your time, and I think that you will enjoy it. But go out and check it out. It's on the Showtime app. You may also be able to catch some episodes on Hulu. So go out and check it out, and please come back and let us know what you think, what you liked, what you didn't like, so forth and so on.
And
But for
it
those,
must, yeah, it must be mentioned. It's on Showtime for a reason, people. I mean, use your brain. If intense situations and language upset you, this probably isn't your show.
yes, and there are some definite sexual situations, scenes. So take that in mind as well. This is not a show for kids. If your if your children aren't about finished up with high school and going into college, I don't think you really want them to be seeing this. Uh, but your mileage may vary based upon your what you deem appropriate. But just know going in, it's not really a show designed for the faint of heart or for children. So, um, with that all being said, we're going to get into the spoilers. If you have any of our listeners who have seen The Shy all three seasons, then stick around because we got a lot to talk about. All right. So I think that you're really chomping at the bit, RJ, a little bit. So I'm going to let you start. And then we'll go in and out and discuss this.
Okay. Ronnie has, I think, by far the most interesting story arc.
Mm-hmm.
He was a character I had kind of written off pretty early on. I didn't think he had a lot to offer. I mean, the actor did a superb job from the beginning. He definitely, to me, it seemed like he was making a lot out of his opportunity, but I had no idea that the show was going to end up centering on him so much throughout all three seasons. He becomes an incredibly important character. Um, it starts off he's lacking in motivation. He doesn't see any way out. He's just kind of content to not do a whole lot of much, and then he makes a terrible mistake and ends up killing someone who he thought had killed his son out of a moment of revenge, and then it turns out that he was completely wrong about that. And you watch someone who is essentially a good man who has done this terrible thing, and at that point, what is that like? What is it like to be haunted by that kind of a mistake? Do you cover it up? Do you try to go forward? And I like the way he tried to make up for it, the way he tried to do right by the people he had hurt. It's a long journey, which included some jail time, and me, John. I love the story of the redemption character, and they don't make it easy. It's a
No.
long process where he probably gets a lot of things he had coming to him in the meantime, and he accepts that when it happens, but ultimately his character journey takes him to a better place. There's no way he can undo what he did, but he can do his best going forward, and I really liked what they did with him. And I'll give you a chance to comment about that, but the next thing I want to talk about is his grandma.
To talk about Ronnie's character, let's first talk about what he did. So this is spoiler territory. So the show starts out with Jason Mitchell's character Brandon and his brother Coogie's younger brother. Coogie is not a gangster. He's a street kid, but he's not a gangster. He's more of an opportunist. So that at his core, he's a great kid. He's got a heart of gold. Everybody likes him. Even the hardened criminals like this kid. But he's not a crook in the sense that he's not a gangbanger. He's not any of that. He's just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He ends up being looked at as the killer of Ronnie's son, who was basically his girlfriend at the time, son, who he kind of raised. Yep. And Ronnie's angry. Ronnie is angry for a lot of reasons. Going into his character later on, as the show develops and as Ronnie's character is explained and explored, we know it's not just about him not wanting to do better or standing on a corner with no motivation. It goes deeper than that. It goes into the fact that we learned he's an Army vet and that he suffers from PTSD and that he has a lot of childhood stigma that he deals with his mother not really being in a position to take care of him, and that his father is someone who was a neighbor and who was mean to him and denied him, and he grew up with his grandmother who loved him unconditionally. Although she at times was hard on him or whatnot, she loved him and he loved her. And you could feel that love in the way that the characters developed and in the way the actors portrayed these characters on screen. So anyway, Ronnie's character basically goes after Coogie. And I don't think that he wanted to necessarily murder Coogie. I think it was a situation where he wanted to scare the hell out of him. And he was at a precipice. He was like, do I really want to kill this kid, or because he was fighting it as it was happening. And I think that what happened was like if you play with fire, you're bound to get burned situation. He has a gun. He's got it on Coogie. He's asking him questions. He sees that Coogie's wearing his son's necklace, and he's like, "Where'd you get this?" And things happen, and emotions happen, and the gun goes off. The bullet hits Coogie, and Coogie dies. Now, this causes a shockwave through Coogie's family, his mother, and his brother, who's the main character seasons 1 and 2. It affects them in obvious ways. They want to find out what's going on. And Ronnie gets caught up in trying to basically avoid this, and he knows what he did. And he's feeling very horrible about killing this kid, and it becomes even more compounded when he realizes that this kid wasn't the one that killed his son. And so he's feeling very remorseful, and he's wanting to atone because he has a conscience. He's not someone who's just a hardened killer person. And even though he's done this thing, I, as a viewer, found myself having a lot of empathy for him, even though I knew that he shouldn't be patted on the back and told, oh, well, that's okay. No, he had to have a redemption arc that touched him on a way that would affect him in all various levels and aspects of his life, because outside of all those other things I mentioned about Ronnie's character, he's also an alcoholic, which is another situation, is another layer that compounds who he is and what he's going through, and this journey from where he was in the very beginning of the series to his redemption arc and into the final scenes. So with that being said, his grandmother is his rock. Yes, she's very well portrayed. I want to definitely give a shout out to LaDonna Tittle. So basically, you have, okay, let me put it to you this way. If you have had a grandma, you know how grandmas are. And she is the epitome of how grandma is. If you had a black grandma, you know that extra layer, that's how she is too. And she does it very well. And it's a situation where, I had that black grandma, and that was her, and all the way to the T.
She just
And
wants to watch your shows.
right. And I know I felt a lot of different things watching this series because it was this year I lost my grandmother who lived to be 105. And seeing the character go through what she went through and the ultimate outcome, then that touched me on a personal level. So I'm gonna let RJ talk about Miss F.
Miss Ethel. Well, growing old sucks, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of one thing they were tapping into. And then, what I liked about Ethel was you thought that she was just kind of surface and just concerned about getting her microwave meals and her shows, and that's it. But then she'd say something that kind of indicated it's a little more aware than she's letting on. And she loves Ronnie very much, and it's a way early on to show the other side, because Ronnie is very, very concerned about her and wants her taken care of, even when the heat is on and he's afraid he might get captured, or he's thinking of turning himself in. He has to make sure that his grandma is taken care of, which he does. Some of my favorite feels in this involved Ethel. Her character arc wraps up quite nicely, I guess was the way I could put it. It's very sweet. Ronnie and his grandma they go out and have a night out where they go to where did she used to own that place, or she just used to perform there or something? But she gets to go out and be the center of attention and tell all of her old stories, and that really moved me a lot. That was a really neat moment. While I'm calling out neat moments, we've already set it up, so I'll say that scene at the end of season 2, where Ronnie finally approaches Brandon. When they finally have a discussion about Coogie, that was rough on me. I don't know about you, but that was that was a big moment where I kind of had to just pause it and take a minute. And I don't mean that it's a good kind of feel, because a lot happened in those moments that needed to happen, that the show had been building up to for 20 episodes. And it was nice closure for both the characters. And I think that scene is one of the highlights of the entire series, actually.
Right. And that was an impetus for further healing and further redemption on Ronnie's road to redemption. Yeah. It was a way for him to start truly setting things right with the people he needed to set things right with. And I want to go into saying that these characters all are interrelated. So let's go back. Brandon lives with his girlfriend, Jerica, and Jerica is played by Tiffany Boone. Mm-hmm. And then you have Ronnie, who's living with his grandmother, Miss Ethel. And you have another family. You have Kevin, who lives with his mother and his sister. And his mother is in a relationship with Dre, who's another woman. So they have a lesbian relationship. They end up getting married, and that's explored and introduced to the show in the very first episode of season 3. And so you have that family dynamic right there. And then you have Keisha, who is a track star in high school, and she's got scholarships to go to college. She's on the track of doing good things and great things, but she's a little bit fast-tailed. She's sneaking out, dating older men. Her track coach, in fact, which was nasty, but it
Yes,
happens.
right.
It does happen in life. You see the dynamic between Keisha and Kevin, and they have the same father, and their father ends up dying, and that ends up drawing them closer together in a lot of ways. But it also, even though the father didn't live with them, uh, and their parents had gotten divorced years ago, Kevin feels like he has to step up and be the man of the house in a lot of ways, and while he's growing up himself, which I have personal experience with. That being said, Kevin has his cohorts, which are Jake and Papa, and then you have Emmett, who is the former boyfriend, or at least intimate partner of Keisha, who they break up, and then Emmett has his own little storyline, and Emmett's mother is the nurse for Miss Ethel, Ronnie's mom, or Ronnie's grandmother. And so basically you have a lot of interaction and interconnectedness with these individuals. And it comes to be where Kevin ends up getting caught up in the whole thing where Ronnie is concerned, because he figures out that Ronnie is the one that killed Coogie. And so he's fearing for his life from Ronnie. And so you've got all of these different moving parts, and all of these characters are connected in a lot of different ways. So I wanted to start that out, just to lay that groundwork. You've got the cops who are looking at Ronnie hard, but also another aspect of Ronnie is an informant for the police. So there's a lot of layers to this whole show and the characters that have them very tightly integrated. Also, you have the elements, the criminal elements. So there's a gang, and back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I'm talking 70s, 80s. There was a kingpin. There was a guy who ran those streets, and his name was Quentin Q. Dickinson. And Quentin is played by Stephen Williams, who you may know as the lieutenant on 21 Jump Street. He's been in so many other things. But, and I'm talking about 21 Jump Street, the TV show, not that movie. But just so there's a distinction there. So all that being said, Q is like that uncle that is shady, that comes to the barbecue, and he will talk to you, and you like, oh man, he's the coolest uncle ever. But your mother will tell you, now don't you go nowhere with him, and don't you and don't you ever even think about being anything like him. He can be cool at the picnic, but that's it.
Right. And don't borrow any money from him.
Right, exactly. And
but I think Sonny says exactly that.
right. And so with that all being said, anybody that's black, that we got an uncle like that, we got somebody like that. I'm not, and you will know when you watch this show, you'll be like, oh yeah, that's Uncle Leroy, But anyway, Q's brother is Sonny, and Sonny owns a chicken restaurant, which Emmett works at. So you've got all of these people tied together in a lot of these different ways. And the main baby mama that Emmett has is with Tiff. And she and Emmett end up basically, let's put it to you bluntly, Emmett can't keep his penis in his pants. He's got all these different baby mamas and all these different dramas, and he doesn't have a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of. He is working, but he hustles, but he does have a sneaker addiction, which he quickly realizes that shit's got to go out the window because you got babies to feed. And Tiff ends up leaving the baby with him, like, you ain't got the money to take care of him. fine, to get me to take care of him, fine, you take care of him yourself. And she's trying to get her head together because she's irresponsible in her own different way. And so Emmett is faced and forced to come to terms with being a father. And this helps to lead him on a path of maturity. He's still got a lot of growing up to do, but it did make a distinct change in where his eyes were focused. And this is a progression that goes throughout the show. And then you have Otis Duda Perry. So let's go back. So let's go back to Q. Q left things in the hands of one of his lieutenants, and he went on and retired from the game. But he come back to visit, and lo and behold, things are happening that he did not like. And one of the things that happened that he did not like was the fact that I believe his name was Jason, who was Ronnie's son, actually was Q's son.
Yes, that's correct.
And so he's like, I leave and you fools killed my son. Oh no, this is not going to stand. And so he starts to digging and he starts to getting back into things. And he's an old OG. He's an OG. So the younger gang members or whatnot, they're like, you know, you crazy old man or whatnot. And he's like, he's fearless. He's like, look, I've lived and I've died and come back. What do you have? You know, so he like get in the middle of the gang members and be like, you know, what are you doing, boy? Get out of my face. And they look at him like, you know, are you crazy? I could shoot you. And he's like, yeah, right. Go ahead. You ain't gonna do nothing. You know, I mean, so he's got that kind of a juice, and he's investigating who was responsible for killing his son. And so he gets to be a thorn in Duda's ass, who is looking to consolidate power on the South Side and also run for political office because he's running for mayor. And so this will lead into something that was like one of those situations where you're like, what the hell just happened? Off screen, Q is killed. After he's gone through all the stuff of finding out who actually killed his son and having them pay and everything like that, he's killed off screen. And we have no idea why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of the stumbling blocks for me on this show.
Right. It was one of the stumbling blocks for me also because, again, going back, I like Stephen Williams as an actor. I liked Q's character. And I was thinking, well, this dude is going to end up going head to head with Duda, which would have been something that I would have loved to have seen. You know, but it didn't play out that way. And he was killed off screen. And I'm like, okay, that's crazy. So anyways, it's also connected in the fact that Kevin's friend, Jake, his older brother, is Reg. And Reg is basically the lieutenant of the guy that took over for Q.
Yeah.
And when his boss gets killed, then he takes over as being the leader and he reports to Duda now that Q is dead. And so now you've got this hierarchy here, this restructuring or whatnot. And you've got the connection with Reg and with Jake, and it becomes a thing. And this all tied together. And then Brandon gets caught up into this, and it is just wow. I'm sitting here replaying it in my mind, and I'm like, wow, it's really tight writing because it's like one thing happens that sets off another thing, but then you just wait a minute and then something that happened in the very beginning pays off 5 episodes later, and you're left thinking, wow, that's what that was about. But then don't blink because something else is going to happen. That's what made this show as great to me as it was.
Yeah, and but you know, I can't sing its praises without pointing out that kind of the opposite happens with certain characters. Brandon Johnson as a character, his arc is just left unresolved. Well, I guess it's not. I mean, he goes from being the main character in some sort of an elaborate sting to the first episode of season 3, we're at his funeral, which was like, what the hell? What happened? You know?
Right. Right.
And that had nothing to do with anything that was planned. It had nothing to do with the writing. It had nothing to do with the twist that they wanted to put in here. It was because of behind the scenes stuff that couldn't be entirely controlled. But so many characters were wrapped up around his character and his storylines that it did create an extremely jarring moment that not in a good way for the way the show played out. I want to talk about how great all of the police detective characters are. There were 3 of them all total, and I was kind of, after season 2, they kind of vanish, and that's unfortunate because I thought they had a lot of really neat stuff going on with the police detectives, who are all very supporting characters, but they're important. You have sort of the guy who knows everybody, Detective Cruz. He's the one who's really tapped into the streets. He knows who the good people are. He knows who the bad people are. He knows who has potential. He knows who has the information. He knows how to track things down, but maybe he wants to be the good guy. He wants to be the good cop, as it were. And it's a complex walk for him because he has to exert authority, but he wants to do things right, and he wants to be seen as someone that the people around him can trust. And most of the time they don't, for very good reason. But I really like the way, you know, he tries to help Ronnie, he tries to help Brandon, he tries to kind of bend the rules in their favor when he can. He stands up for the people. It's like, no, this guy really wasn't involved, and this isn't what you think it is. And he's mainly talking to the lady detective, Alice Toussaint, is that right?
Yeah.
Played by Crystal Dickinson, who was pretty much only in season 2. She comes in as an out-of-area detective to try to help figure things out. Very, very well-crafted character. She is more inclined to kind of break the rules and throw her weight around, punch some faces if she needs to get people's attention. And so the 2 of them clash, but they're both trying to do the right thing and you know, not necessarily clean up the streets, but get the bad guys that they can. And they just go about it in different ways. And as much as I was into that dynamic, I was really disappointed that between seasons 2 and 3, they're just gone. And their characters just disappear because of the way they had been wrapped up with Brandon Johnson's character, and the actor had left. And then so they went with that character's storyline. And I thought that was kind of a shame because I thought that they certainly could have found other things for them to do. But while they're there, it's really fascinating to watch. And then the third detective is kind of a scumbag, and you kind of figure that out right away, and he gets what he's got coming.
Yes. There was definitely a lot of retribution to be met out in this series. And to pick back up on what RJ was saying with regards to Brandon's character, not only was this an exit for Brandon's character, but it was also an abrupt exit for his girlfriend, Jerica, who is not seen again. And it also sends his mother who's portrayed by Sonia Psalm, Laverne Johnson, as she
Yes.
sends her packing. And so, it's like they don't even have a reason to be there. She doesn't have a reason to be there anymore. You see at the funeral, she gets in a limo or gets in a car, and her fiance, they're going out of state. Both her sons are dead. She doesn't have any family there, so why not leave? Her basically losing the character of Brandon has a ripple effect that causes other characters to just drop out too.
Yeah,
And it changes the dynamic. And I have to admit that when I saw that the actors, specifically the actor portraying Brandon, Jason Mitchell, was leaving, one of the things that resonated with me was, since he was such an integral part of the show, how are you going to recoup? How are you going to get beyond that? And I really started feeling like, oh Lord, this show was so great. Now it's just going to go downhill. And, I hated that. I hated thinking that, because I liked the show that much. But I think maybe 1 to 2 episodes into season 3, my fears were put to rest, because it was almost like they passed the baton to the other characters and they ran with it. And I mean, they ran with it. It was not as though you forgot the characters of Brandon and Jerica, but the focus shifted, and it shifted more to Ronnie, more to Kevin, more to Keisha and Emmett. And it just went. It just was like, okay, well, we got this. And that's exactly how I felt when I started getting into that season.
Yeah, so Brandon and his wife, I believe, were the first characters that came out as, they were the first ones with the story arc that I found interesting. He quits his restaurant, he starts the taco truck, which, I mean, you're really rooting for him, and you really get the hard times he has trying to be an entrepreneur and trying to get everything going. I mean, you really you want to see him succeed so bad. And his wife, who is understanding a lot of the time.
Yeah, they were girlfriend, boyfriend. They weren't married.
Oh, that's right. I stand correct. Well, that's right. And then, but that was also something that was going to happen. That
right, they were engaged, and then they ended up breaking up.
And but I think before, like, Emmett, I had taken as a tertiary character who was going to stay a tertiary character. I'd never expected him to move forward the way he did in season 3, and really, they lost 4 or 5 characters, but then they introduced 4 or 5 characters, and I think they found a good way to kind of smooth out the transition. As even though I was grumbling here and there, I do believe that the new people that they brought in were at least as interesting as the people that they lost, even though you kind of had to roll with the punches a little bit because of the realities of putting a show like this together.
Right. And they did do a good job of building upon something that they had when they had Emmett be taken under Brandon's wing with the taco truck, and he actually had good ideas, good entrepreneurial ideas on how to do some things. That was kind of like a baton being passed, but I don't think that they necessarily had it in mind to quite the way that it went, but it did give him a solid foundation, Emmett. It did give him a solid foundation to become an anchor for the show going farther into season 3. And I think he picks up the baton, and he doesn't look back. You start to really root for him, even though he can't keep his penis in his pants. And it seems to be something that, you're like, they introduce his father, and then you're like, oh, now I see why he's fucked up. I mean, it's just like, because the mother is, you rooting for her. His mother is, she was trying, she she was there for him, but she was like, I'm tired of enabling you. You need to get it together, or whatnot. She was a hard worker. She's the nurse. She was doing her thing and trying to live a good life. And so you commend her. But Emmett is one of those characters where I really like Emmett. He is a good kid. To his core, he's a good kid. He just doesn't know how to say no to a woman. He just doesn't know how to do that. But you see his character arc and you see his journey. So this series is all about the different characters' journeys. And it's, even though you've got Ronnie on a redemption arc, you also have Emmett on a maturity arc. He's growing up and he's realizing that he doesn't need any more babies, mamas. He doesn't realize, he starts to realize that, he wants to have some stability in his life. So he ends up selling food after hours from Sonny's restaurant where he was working, and Sonny gets wind of it and fires him or whatnot. But he and another woman who was introduced, which is she's portrayed by Lala Anthony. Her name is Dominique. She is like, and if you don't know who Lala Anthony is, she's the wife of NBA superstar Carmelo Anthony. But she ends up getting his attention because in the hood, she is like the bomb diggity chef. Her food is just awesome. But she's also somebody who's heard about Emmett's reputation. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to give you the time of day unless you show me your penis. And because it's legendary in the hood. This actually happened, but it was so funny. And it was like, okay, look, I'm going to go ahead and do this, but that's not really what I'm after. Even though because he's such a horn dog, they end up having sex. And it's like, that was the thing. That was the last draw for him. He started to realize, look, she's not into me like that. I didn't lay it on her to where she's falling in love. She's like, okay, we did this and it put some things into perspective for him to help him grow up and realize that maybe he needs to focus on what he and Tiffany have and settle down, take care of his kids, and start to mature, get into this business, keep this woman as a partner and grow that business and become successful in that way. And that's what he does.
All right, that's where we've left them at the end of season 3. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
This concludes part 2 of our discussion and review of The Chi. Join us on Friday for part 3. And until then, stay nerdy.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds, a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.